Good afternoon.
Hello, Paul.
Well, according to the memorial brochure, this is the time for sharing. I want to thank you all for coming today and welcome to this gathering. The purpose of this event is to acknowledge and commemorate among ourselves here and at this time the passing of Catherine Reichel. Before we begin the time of sharing, I would like to share two things with you. First, the last time I wore this tie was at our wedding. She hated it. And secondly, she made this suit for me. And now I welcome each of you to stand up and share a memory or a story about Catherine. But before you share your story or memory, I would ask you to do two things. One, state your name, and second, tell us how you knew Catherine.
Hi, I'm Troy Brumman and my wife Heidi. I'm going to tell you how I met Catherine. Heidi and I started in a small mall called Broadway Antique Mall, and we would go in there, and my wife would go to the left to her booth, and I would go to the right to this mysterious person's booth who I loved. And I would drool over all her antiques. I just thought this person was a creative genius. I absolutely loved her booth. And my wife would then meet me in that booth later, and I'd be like, look at this. Don't you love this? I love this. I want this. And one day I said to my wife, I'm going to meet this woman. This woman I have got to meet. And so every time we'd go to the mall, I'd go to that booth, and I finally got to meet Catherine. And how I met her is, she came in, and I thought it was her, and I went up to her and I said, everything in your booth, I want. And at the time, she collected a lot of Mission, and my wife and I were collecting Mission. And I also was collecting some art glass, and she had a piece. And we talked about the art glass, and I eventually bought it from her. But when we came to the price that I was going to pay, I said to her, am I paying for your tag, or am I paying for the art glass? For those of you who have ever been to Catherine's booth, her tags were wonderful. I used to tease her, I called her the word artist, because her tags were beautiful, her tags were so descriptive, and you could read them like a book. And so after I bought this art glass, I wasn't sure what I liked better. Did I like the tag? Did I like my art glass? Or did I finally like the person who I always wanted to meet? She was witty, she was fun, she had a sense of humor, and I immediately fell in love with this woman. Again, I'm going to use these words. She was a creative genius. And so my wife and I met her, and we instantly became friends. She invited us into the Wisconsin Pottery Club. She took us under her wing. She helped us price our things. She helped us decorate our booth. She gave us advice. And most importantly, she was our friend. And I am truly, truly going to miss my creative genius. About a week before her passing, we were at a flea market, and she came and she sat with my wife and I, and we laughed and we talked, and we laughed and we talked. And after the flea market, I said to my wife, God, I love that woman. and she is going to be truly missed. And again, her humor, her wit, her creativity, she has blessed my life. She has taught me things I will never forget, and I will think about her for the rest of my life. Paul, thank you.
Hello, my name is Charlie Sanders. I'm a cousin to Paul, Catherine's cousin-in-law. Where there's laughter, there's Catherine. Where there's shenanigans, there's Catherine. Where there's parody, there's Catherine. When things were over the top, Catherine put them there. If the top wasn't high enough, she'd increase it. But it was always to the extreme. It was wonderful entertainment. It was wonderful to be around her. That was what's so wonderful about Catherine. And of course, she's not there. I'm going to miss her. And the big thing is the relationship Paul and Catherine had. It was perfect. It was complementary. They needed each other. They were very good for each other. And I wish it could continue forever, but it can't. I'm truly sorry she's passed. I won't be able to enjoy her anymore. I know her really well, but while she was there, it was wonderful. She always over the top. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Hello, my name's David Zarell. Catherine was my first cousin. So I've probably known her longer than any one of you, except my sister who's older than me. So, in our early 20s and late teens, I was stationed at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Catherine lived in Washington, D.C. at the time. We had not spent a lot of time together as young children, but as old children, which we certainly were, Catherine and I became fast friends. She was more than a cousin. Pardon me. She was a great friend. Funny. Like Charlie said, she was one of the funniest people you'll ever want to be around. There are two things. I got one. Two stories I'd like to share. In 1971, I was getting ready, Christmas of 1971. I had been scheduled to go overseas. It was 550,000 American troops in Vietnam, and I went to Europe. So anyway, that was my kind of last Christmas there. And Catherine, got me 2 Christmas presents that year. If you were of that genre, that generation, you remember Ron Popeil and the Popeil products that were always on TV, selling, Minso this and Veggie that and Whammy this. And so I got this present on Christmas morning, and it was this roached Veg-O-Matic. It was dirty and nasty and rusty and an original box. And I'm sitting there going, where in the world did you get this? This is just incredible. And then Paul reminded me just this morning about the frog. And she got me this ceramic frog. That frog has been around the world with me. I take it with me everywhere I go. It is in my home right now in Sebastian, Florida, sitting on the front porch, just waiting. Who knew? I mean, I've had that thing for over 40 years. And then the second story is, Sebastian had its annual Clam Fest last weekend. And Charlie and Carolyn Duncan, who you've met, and Judy and I went to the Clam Fest. And as we did, when you guys were down there so many times, after we ate, we went to Paradise for ice cream. It's an ice cream store that Catherine loved and Paul loved. We always would go out to dinner, and then after dinner, we would go to Paradise for ice cream. And I sat there, pardon me, knowing that she wouldn't be there anymore. and how much she's going to be missed. Just the fun, just the joy of having her in our life. We will miss her.
I'm Mark Delabrew, and I don't have a particular story to tell, but I've heard the word genius used, and she was everything. For me, she was a force of nature. She had unbelievable humor, energy. She was so smart, so engaging. Everybody that came into contact with her absolutely adored her. Including my children. When you have kids, sometimes they could be bothered with my friends or our friends. They had their own friends. But when Catherine died, I told both of our daughters about Catherine's passing, and they both, one, remembered her, but also said, "Oh, we really liked her." And she engaged with kids. She engaged with teenagers and wanted to hear from them. They wanted to learn from them, see what their interests were, and the kids really connected with her and really appreciated her interest. The other thing about Catherine I remember most is, and maybe you all know this as well, I know you know it, what was the best thing that ever happened to her? It was Paul. And she was totally upfront with that. And I didn't really understand that. But the best thing that ever happened to her was Paul. And I think the best thing that ever happened to Paul was Catherine. And I do want you to know, Paul, she wouldn't have said that if she didn't feel the love from you. She felt it very deeply. So, yeah.
Forgive me for not walking up front. I'm Shirley Bauman, and I've known Catherine for about 17 years. And we first met when we were both working for someone else. And within the first meeting, less than an hour, we knew we loved antiques. And from there, we got to working together. And we just spent countless hours together, all days, road trips, overnights. We had just a wonderful time together, and it hardly ever seemed like work. We were always gabbing and laughing, sometimes uncontrollably. However, when we needed to tell each other something difficult, we could do that, and that certainly is the mark of a true friend, when you can share the unvarnished truth. And we did that a lot. And because we had that kind of open relationship, we were also able to tell each other how much we cared for one another. And I really feel blessed that we could do that. But we had so many times together. While we always strive to put on a good event, a professional event, an estate sale or auction or whatever it was, when we were alone working together, sometimes we could be, a little bit like Lucy and Ethel. One time we were working in the lower level of a home, a very nicely appointed lower level, and we heard a rapping on that basement window. And it kept getting louder and louder and more intense, and it had been a home of a deceased that we were working in an estate sale, and we thought someone was trying to break in. And it got much more intense. And of course we hatched a plan. We were going to go over there, and we sidled across the basement, and we were going to open that. We were quiet, and we were going to open that window and make sure we saw the perpetrator's face. We watched TV. We knew you had to describe them. And so we stood each on one side of that window and pulled up the blinds, and there was a sandhill crane fighting its reflection. And he came back and visited every day about the same time. He was there protecting its mate and two young, which she had under her wings, which we got to see on another day. There was another time when we were working in a home, setting up an estate sale, and She was in one room, I was in the living room. It was a hot summer day, and I had my shoes off, and all of a sudden I yelled out I had dropped a huge, heavy brass ashtray on my bare foot. And of course I said something probably like, "Oh shucks." And "What's wrong?" And she came running, and she said, "Sit down, I'll get some ice, sit down." And I sat down, and I propped my foot up, and she ran into the kitchen and came into the living room there and promptly put on my foot a frozen ring of bologna. She looked at me and she said, "No ice, this was all I could find." And so there I sat with my toes peeking through a ring of bologna. And of course that image, as you can imagine, got us laughing like crazy, and the pain went away pretty fast. But there are so very many memories like that I have, and I will keep them in my heart. And everything all of you said, I echo. And my life will never be the same because she was in it. And my life will never be the same because she's no longer in it.
I'm Rich Bauman. I remember the first time I met Catherine, she brought some stuff to our auction. And when it came time to sell something of hers, I told her, "Well, hold it up and tell people about it." And she said, "I can't do that." And I teased her a little bit, and she did it. And she loved it and wanted to do it every time after that. I'm going to miss Catherine a lot. I can't remember anybody that I liked better.
My name is Andrew Howick. I knew Catherine through Paul. And Paul and many others of us in the room came together as runners. Some of us are still running. And once a year for many years, we've had a wonderful event where all of us come together, have a big meal. Well, first we run a race, and that's what I really wanted to talk about. Was many of these are the race that we ran together to fundraise for arthritis. And it was pretty much the only time I saw Catherine. Once a year was at this party. But as many of you have pointed out, really overjoyed, joyous person, and always very welcoming to all of us, especially me. That was a wonderful thing. Also, her chocolate bread was greatly appreciated at every one of these parties. It would come wrapped in foil with a ribbon on it, and we would wait till the end of the meal to slice it all up. But in closing, I just want to say I'm with Catherine on that tie.
Catherine's chocolate bread was enjoyed by many, many people. It's a wonderful treat. But I have to say that the bread was only as good as, is comparable in quality and excellence to Andy's soup. And what topped both Andy's soup and Catherine's chocolate bread was Mark Delbrew. Stand up. Stand up. Was Mark Delbrew who hosted this Jingle Bell, post-Jingle Bell run every year for 21 more years. Anyone else? Are you ready, Mrs. Hutchinson?
My name is Judy Hutchinson, and I've only known Catherine 8 years, but they have been 8 wonderful years. And I learned a lot from Catherine. I learned more about the appreciation of friendship. She was true. She was very sincere, and she truly, truly cared about people. And I've always believed that each and every one of us in this life is given to one another as a gift. And how we decide to use that gift is entirely up to us. And I am truly, truly thankful that I had her for 8 years as a gift.
He's already giving me a hard time. I'm Sarah Heinzen, and I met Catherine, well, I met this guy first. I met Paul when I was 12 years old. He was a friend of my parents, and I heard about this lady, Catherine, in the summer of '77. We figured out I wasn't too happy to hear that he had somebody he was interested in because I had a pretty massive crush on him at 13 and a half. Still kind of do. But he came up to see my family. We had a cabin in Maine, and he and Catherine came up from Washington, D.C. that summer, and I met her of all the luxurious and exciting places, the KOA campground in the middle of the state in Maine. I think she was about 27, 28. I was about 14 at that time. And it was probably the luckiest day of my life. She was everything to me. She was a sister, a mother. She was a mentor. She was a dear, dear friend. She taught me about things I should have known at that age and things I probably shouldn't have known at that age. When I was 17, my parents, I still don't believe they let me do this, they let me take an Amtrak out to Helena, Montana to see Paul and Catherine all by myself, which I would never do with my child, even when she's 21 probably. And they had to come and get me I had to take a train to Havre, and then there was no train to Helena, and then you had to take a bus to Helena. And I think they had to come get me, Paul would say, in the middle of the night. I'm pretty sure it was about 9:30. But if you guys know them, that was quiet time for them. She has been with me through really difficult times and really lovely times. She literally taught me about sex, drugs, rock and roll. She championed some of the people in my life, and some she gently persuaded me to let go along the wayside. Some of those could have been men in my life, I'm not sure. I think there's some letters where she had a few comments about some exes. But later in my life, I had the good fortune of meeting my husband, and he's kind of a thin man, similar to somebody else. And we would always commiserate and say things about how did us chubby girls find these strikingly thin men with really smart men with great senses of humor that can handle us. Because the thing that Catherine and I did have in common is that we were both a little bit too much sometimes, and a bit of she was very much a character, and I loved her so much. She's in every part of our house. She's in everything that I do, from the makeup that I wear to the purses that I carry to the clothing that I wear. I have more antiques than I will ever know what to do with, and the silverware we have, my husband's fond of telling me we've never had that many people to our house. I think we've used it twice, but I'm ready if the meal ever happens. We were down to see Paul a few weeks ago, and he gave me some lotion of hers of Shalimar, which I think all of you probably may not know that that's what she smelled like, but that was her scent. And we came home, and our daughter is 14 now, the age I was when I met Catherine, and she asked if she could have one of the lotions, and I gave it to her, and she went in her room, and she came back and said, with this kind of 14-year-old attitude, I didn't know this was Shalimar, I just thought this was Catherine. And so that is how I will remember Shalimar. We literally have put Catherine over the lotion at our house. She is in me. I will honor her the rest of my days, and I love you.
Hi, my name is Sue Duncan. Catherine was one of the part of the fabric of the antique mall that we have on Odana Road, and I would say an integral part of it. I brought along a hanky because Catherine was the hanky queen and the silver plate queen, and I actually bought this to give to her, but didn't have a chance to. I think there are countless times that we gave out Catherine's name to people who were looking for someone to hold their hand when they tried to figure out what to do with their parents' merchandise. There were countless times we gave out her name to people who wanted help figuring out what they had, and she always treated them with respect and with dignity. And they would come into the store and tell stories about what a character she was and how she was there for them and how they appreciated that. But I think what I remember most is that Catherine made you want to be a better person. That when you were with Catherine and she was telling you about something and her knowledge was vast, you got done with the conversation and you thought, I'd like to know that much. I'd like to learn like she did. And when she was giving advice on how to fix a problem we were having with the store with great patience and great honesty and directness at the same time, you'd walk away from that conversation and say, I want to be a woman like that. I want to have that strength and that fortitude. The other night I had a dream about Catherine, and in the dream she was telling me something about the piece of furniture I just bought, and going on in detail about it, and I said, you can't be doing this, you're dead. And she said, that doesn't stop me, I'm still going to be involved.
I'm Brenna Hopkins, and I'm on the periphery of all these things, but Catherine was not in the periphery of my life, ever. Catherine Reichel understood how to be family. I've never known anyone who knew more the meaning of chosen family. And I think we met at Oakwood. I can't even remember if it was after the Quonset hut was built or when it was still in the house, but I really blessed the day that she took, for some reason, an interest in me and encouraged me. Every story I can think of, every encounter I can think of, event I can think of with Catherine in my life was her encouraging me to be the best person I could be with ruthless honesty and the tenderest heart. And that is always how I will remember her, is how could a person be so honest and always kind and funny as hell. So I am really sad and sorry I can't believe that. I hear it up here. That's where she is now.
I'm Carol Knight. I own Maple Bluff Antique Mall. And I'll be honest, I didn't really know Catherine very well. She was a customer. And those of you who've been in my mall know that I tend to be a bit of a smart ass. And sometimes I wonder why my customers come back because of the way I talk to them. And Catherine, of course, always came back, and she was a smartass right back. But the one day that I remember, the last time I saw her actually, she was in the mall, and I was lamenting about how slow business was. Oh my God, things are so rotten lately. Oh, okay. Am I okay? All righty. How bad business was. Things were so slow, and oh my God, I must be driving people away with me in my smart mouth. And she looked at me and she grinned and she said, Carol, everybody loves you. Don't worry about it. And so I agree with Brenna. She did her best to make you feel good about yourself and just get on with life no matter what. So I will remember Catherine for that. Nobody's ever told me before that everybody loves me. I have to tell you, though, this morning, I was telling that story to one of my dealers, and he grinned, and he said, not everybody does.
Hi, my name's Jack Bohan, and I know Catherine through Paul, through the running group that was referenced earlier. And one of the stories about, and I don't know if this happened at the same time as you met Catherine camping, and you brought up Washington, and Paul told me a story that when Paul and Catherine met, it was love at first sight. And they knew they were right for each other. But Catherine is a city girl, and they met in Washington, D.C., and she, she's a little bit more sophisticated. He's from the city, Kaukauna. I don't know if that makes you a city boy, but Paul liked to go camping and fishing and that type of thing. So as they met, he told her, Catherine, that's kind of what I like to do. That's the way I enjoy myself and relax and go fishing and camping. Being Catherine, of course, she said, great, let's do that. I want to do that. And of course, like any city girl, when Paul said, okay, I'm going to pick you up on the weekend to go camping, great, yeah, let's go. And like any city girl, at least like Catherine, she showed up in her high heels. And the other thing about Catherine, and we've heard so many nice stories about her, about a wonderful person she was. And I don't know if you've heard this from Paul, but I've often heard Paul refer to Catherine as Sweetie. And so one of the Saturdays after we have our run, one of our traditions is to have coffee and have sweet rolls and talk about Badgers and politics. That's kind of the way it goes every weekend. But I noticed one weekend, I said, Paul, I've never seen you eat anything. You've never had any of the sweets, and we're all kind of grabbing at them generally. Okay, that's maybe why Paul's so thin, I don't know. But he said, oh, no. He said, the reason I don't have any of the sweets is that Catherine makes a full breakfast for me every Saturday morning after I come back from my run. And I thought, wow, she is truly a sweetie. That's one of the small things, but one of the stories I'm sure that adds out to her sweetness and a truly sweet person. So, yeah.
My name is Linda Roberts. He's my brother, and Catherine was my first cousin. As he said, we were not that close as children because we lived in Kansas City and then down in Florida and she in Maryland. But the year we really bonded was 1965. We loved the Beatles. And Catherine had an ear for accents. She could do a Liverpool accent like you wouldn't believe. Well, Help had come out, the movie. And we went and saw it every day that they were there. 6 or 7 days, we saw it every day. And our mothers would say, you've seen this, you don't need to go get, oh, yes, we do. So we would go, we would see it. And then we would come home and make telephone calls to my friends. And she, with her Liverpool accent, would just blow their minds away, you know. And we lost contact again after that. I went back to Kansas City the next year, got married and to this wonderful man here who's been my husband for 51 years. We have reconnected in the last 2003, when Paul and Catherine would come to Florida. We would have family get-togethers, and we would spend the day. And they would just, as everybody said, Catherine, she's a hoot. That's all there is to it. Catherine was a hoot, and we loved her. We loved her dearly. And we will miss her beyond words. We will miss her. And we love you.
Hi, I'm Irene McCauley. And I met Catherine when I got back from Peace Corps in Washington, D.C. in an office called Outplacement. And Outplacement was a counseling and job finding office in D.C. And I came in looking for a job. And she helped me do my SF-171. She taught me how to do it. And then she hired me. And I said, well, this is great. Now we'll get a chance to work together, but I don't have any place to live. She said, do you wear clogs? No, I don't. She said, well, there's an apartment right above mine. So, went over that day, met the landlord, got the lease, moved in. A year later, Catherine and Paul got married. In the pictures of the wedding, I was the one with the perm, the green Moroccan dress. I did the flowers. And since then, she's been my sister. Unfortunately, I adopted a little cat many years ago. And our yearly Thanksgiving dinners stopped after. That's also, you don't see me in all the Thanksgiving pictures because I was a photographer. But one year, Ronnie was visiting me from Buffalo, and he took me to, and that was in 2008 when Obama was elected, and that was our last Thanksgiving. So, I always thought they would be fine. And the years I haven't seen her, talk to her, long emails, long detailed emails. I guess it was unexpected. And I love her dearly. I wish I got to know some of you better. But I miss her terribly.
I am Joyce Mischler Brooker, a daughter-in-law of Paul's. I gotta think. Well, anyway, Agnes's husband. Each year on New Year's Day, the Mischlers go around and we see trees. Now there are 8 or 9 of us. That means we have to have 9 stops in one day. We have a drink at each one, if anyone wants it. We have candy and cookies and candy and cookies and drinking. And we just have a wonderful time. And we have started that at most homes we have a jigsaw puzzle started. And Catherine loved to help us fix our jigsaw puzzles. And as everyone else has said, she was a hoot. I mean, there was never a dull moment. We just had so much fun. Yeah, we loved her and still love her, and love you too, Paul.
Well, thanks again for coming. I really appreciate that. You'll never know how much I do. And please enjoy the rest of the afternoon till 3:30. I guess they want us out of here. And I can see there's food still remaining, and there's a bartender who's not occupied at the moment. And there's coffee behind my cousin, who's related to me twice. There's a story behind that. Anyway, thanks again for coming, everybody. Thank you very much.